Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to Chilltown Hoops. I'm your host, Jermaine. The youngsters call me OG. My friends call me J Dub. Let's get to it. So, really interesting. Yesterday, Kyrie Irving spoke out about his situation with the Brooklyn Nets. He made it clear that not to believe that he was going to retire, that he wasn't not going to get vaccinated, and he spoke out on all of these things that are being said about him finally. And he was very adamant and very animated about how people are treating him and telling us not to believe anything that these people are saying about him, and the fact that he was promised an exemption only to find out that he's not promised an exemption. Well, a lot of that stuff may very well be true. However, when these things transpire and you don't say anything, when these things happen and you keep quiet for as long as you've kept quiet, the problem happens. The problem that happens is people develop a perception. They start to think that you're this way. They start to think that you're that way because you're not speaking. You're not telling anybody anything when this is about you. And we all know what perception becomes. Perception becomes reality. So if you're not speaking about these things, immediately people start to think, well, you're being selfish. You're not for the team. You need to get your priorities in order. And whether these things are true or not, it doesn't matter because that is now the perception because you haven't spoken about this. You haven't said anything about this. So when you are on a team, we trade the I's for we's. I've already said that and I stand by that. We trade the I's for we's. Now, I want it to be made clear that with a guy like Kyrie Irving, who's he's a different personality. You know, he's very aloof. He's just a different guy. And when things like this transpire, you kind of expect him to come out and say what he said. Eventually. The cat's already out the bag, though. And do I expect you to retire? No, I don't expect you. No, I don't expect you to retire. To be quite honest with you, Kyrie, I don't know what to expect from you. 1 minute, you may say I'm not retiring, and then in a week, I want to be traded or I want to retire because you seem to be all over the place. But the point that I'm making here is when stuff like this happens and you on a team, we have to get to the bottom of it immediately because it could tear at the fabric of the team. And when you're in a position like the Brooklyn Nets are in where, they have an opportunity to do something special, right? They have an opportunity to do something special, which is win the NBA championship. The question that needs to be answered is, is everybody on board? That's the only way we're going to win this thing. Is everybody on board? And I've said this in the past. If you are that one person that's saying, I'm having a problem with this or I'm having a problem with that, my mentality immediately is not, let's get rid of him. That's not my mentality. My mentality more is, what's going on? What am I not seeing? What should I be paying more attention to? School me. But when you stay quiet, perception becomes reality, and now you find yourself in this position where you have to defend yourself instead of it being that right from the beginning. This is how I feel about this. This is where I stand on this. And this is where I'm going to stay. As opposed to the attitude of, I don't feel like I owe you people an explanation because that's where the perception becomes reality because you're not saying anything. So you leave people to just continue to speculate. And then when they start to speculate, they start thinking about things like, well, he's selfish because you're not talking. The attitude could very well be, I don't think that I don't feel like I need to explain myself to you people. And then that can spill over to a number of different things. So this is where we find ourselves now with Kyrie. I'm not saying that Kyrie is a bad guy or anything like that. Well, I don't know the guy personally, but from what I've seen and the things that I've heard, Irving's a different cat, and with a different cat like that, you have to handle him in a different way. Now, the proof is in the pudding with him. You saw what happened when he left Cleveland. I mean, that thing was they were able to hold that thing together primarily because of James. You saw what happened when he was in Boston. They ended up getting back to the Eastern Conference Finals. You saw what happened. Now he's in Brooklyn, and we're having similar issues. So this isn't something that's going to change. This is who this guy is. All right? This is who this guy is. So the question that needs to be answered from any organization is, are you prepared and are you comfortable dealing with what comes with Kyrie Irving? If you are, you can absolutely have him on your team. If you're not, then he's not somebody that you want to. He's not somebody that you want to have on your unit. That's simple. I want to transfer to something that I got finished talking about. I get bombarded with inquiries about the Chicago Bulls. You know, talk about the Chicago Bulls. Talk about the Chicago Bulls. And I was trying to understand, why do people constantly want me to talk about the Bulls? And then it started to make sense because I'm understanding, Chicago being a basketball city, and they were bad for a long time with Bob Love and Reggie Theus. And then they get Jordan. And then they start building that team with Scottie Pippen and Horace Grant and John Paxson and Bill Cartwright, B.J. Armstrong, Cliff Livingston, Stacey King. And then they start winning NBA championships, and they're really good for a long time. Jordan and Pippen and Steve Kerr and all of these guys, they go away. And then the Bulls are back to rebuilding it again. And now there's the Kirk Heinrich, Tyson Chandler, Luol Deng era. And then now they're starting to build it again. And they're getting behind the fans are getting behind the Bulls. And then they go back to they go back to being bad, and then they get Derrick Rose. And then after that, they're back to that championship caliber ball club. And then what we don't know that Derrick Rose is made of glass. So they go back to being a mediocre, middle of the road team. And I understand the passion in Chicago with the Bulls because, that's a basketball city. I'm a huge fan of basketball cities. I love Boston, Chicago, Philadelphia, Miami, New York. These are Boston. These are basketball cities where people are very passionate about basketball. So I can appreciate, what the fan base is and why I constantly get inquiries about the Chicago Bulls. Talk about Chicago Bulls. Talk about the Chicago Bulls. And, I do my best to talk about everybody, but the Chicago Bulls in particular, I think that this season I have them in the play-in tournament. I got them around 7-8 because I think the Eastern Conference is a lot better this season than what it's been. The additions that the Chicago Bulls have made with DeMar DeRozan and Vujacic and the emergence of hopefully Pat Williams and Kobe White and grabbing Caruso, that was huge for them. Chicago is a better defensive team than what I thought. They were in the top. They were in the top 15 in defensive efficiency, which is about average. They're going to have to get better to take that next step to make a deep run in the playoffs. But I think that it's a lot about matchups. Atlanta proved that last year. If you can get a favorable matchup early and get some momentum, you can make a run. And I think that Chicago may very well have that kind of team. If I told you at this time last year, before the season started, or maybe even a month into the season, if I told you I got the Atlanta Hawks in the Eastern Conference Championship, you would have, not only would you have told me to go away, you probably would have never listened to anything that I've ever said, that I would ever say again, because there's no evidence to prove that the Atlanta Hawks could make a deep run in the playoffs, only except they did. And if you could get a favorable matchup and get some momentum, because Chicago does have the pieces, with Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan on the wing, and now adding Lonzo Ball as your floor leader, I think that team, if they get if they get a favorable matchup and they can get some momentum, they can make a run in the playoffs. So I'm gonna be watching Chicago more this season, and it's gonna be really interesting. So, alrighty, guys. Until next time, take it light, but take it.